Hello, everybody. It's Mrs. Pound, and we are back with another chapter, Chapter 5 on genetics from BJU Biology 4th edition. The first section of Chapter 5 is about genes, chromosomes, and cell division. So let's first talk about from subsection 5.1 the mechanism of heredity. So our objectives are going to be to define genetics, differentiate between a gene and a chromosome, describe the structure of a chromosome, and explain the difference between a haploid and a diploid chromosome number. Before we get into all that, let's first talk about species characteristics. These are characteristics that every members of a species possess. So in the background here, I have some clownfish, and clownfish, have a particular shape. They have a particular color pattern that is common to all members of that species. Some examples for humans are we all have 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose, a mouth, and thumbs. There are also individual characteristics. These are characteristics that make an individual unique, like these puppies here. Some examples are eye, hair, and skin color, and body build. In fact, in the background, you wouldn't maybe guess this, but these 2 young ladies are actually fraternal twins, okay? But they have species characteristics that are the same, but they also have their own individual characteristics that make them look very different, even though they are sisters. And one thing we need to know is that there's always this debate between genetics and the environment and which shapes us more. And people like to blame their sin and their bad behavior on either their genes, they were born that way, or the environment, it's the way they were raised. But the truth of the matter is that humans are more than just the sum of their inherited genetic potential and their environment, since they also have a spiritual nature. And we know that by believing that Jesus Christ is our Savior and accepting Him as our Savior, that can really change our life. And then we are more than just our genetics and our environment that we were raised in. We can change. So let's get into the genetics side of everything. Genetics is the study of heredity. So we see a family in the background there, and you can see some common characteristics they have between their parents. When we study genetics, we talk about genes. These are segments of DNA capable of producing specific amino acid chains or polypeptides resulting in particular characteristics. And in fact, we've already done some of that coding. So here is a chromosome in the background. It has DNA on it. Certain sections of that DNA code for different genes, which will make a protein. A simpler way to define gene would be to just say sections of a chromosome that code for a trait. So that just simplifies that definition. So what is a chromosome? A chromosome is a strand of DNA entwined with proteins, usually found within the cell's nucleus. So here are chromosomes, okay? Now, within the structure of a chromosome are things called histones. This is a protein that supports, protects, and helps maintain the tightly coiled structure of the DNA in a chromosome. So the histones are these proteins that the DNA winds around to make a chromosome. Chromosomes have chromatids. This is one of 2 DNA duplicates that compose one chromosome when the chromosome is not separated. So here we have a chromosome, and it's made up of 2 chromatids. Now, this DNA is duplicated, it is replicated. We only see it like this in its replicated form because this is when it's going to undergo mitosis, is when it forms the chromosomes that we can actually see. Otherwise, DNA is very thread-like and we can't see it in the cell. There is a centromere on the chromosome. This is the attachment point of two sister chromatids. It also serves as the attachment point of spindle fibers during mitosis. So here's our chromosome right here. Here's a chromatid and there's a chromatid. We call those sister chromatids, and they are attached by the centromere in the middle. So centromere, center. The number of chromosomes differs among different organisms, but is the same in virtually all the normal cells of an individual organism. So, for example, you can see here that the number of chromosomes in a number of different animals, for some of them it's the same, like a buffalo, cattle, and goat all have the same number of chromosomes. But there are many that are different as well. For example, between a cat and a buffalo, okay? So it really varies depending upon the species. And you can see for humans right here, we have 46 diploid chromosomes. Now, let's talk about a karyotype. A karyotype is an illustration in which the chromosomes of a cell are arranged according to their size. So, we're going to talk about analysis of karyotypes later, but here is a karyotype of a human, 23 chromosome pairs. These are our sex chromosomes, so X and Y. This is a male, and we can look at these to determine an individual's gender. We can also look at it to determine if there might be any genetic disorders that an individual has. On this karyotype, we see homologous chromosomes. These are two chromosomes that have the same kinds of genes, alleles, in the same order. So all of these pairs we call homologous chromosomes because they're the same length and they have the same general banding pattern. So we can match them up and we know that they contain the same genes. And where you get the homologous chromosomes from is you get one from your mother, one from your father. Everybody has homologous chromosomes like this. And these chromosomes are called homologs. One member of a homologous pair of chromosomes is a homolog. So they have just those special names. Now we have different vocabulary for describing the numbers of the chromosomes. Diploid is having homologous pairs of chromosomes. So when they're in a pair, like on the karyotype, we call that diploid. Di meaning two, okay? Like double. So we have a double of each chromosome. There's two of them. The notation for that is 2N. This is in our somatic cells. Somatic cells are all the cells in our body except for our reproductive cells. And in humans, the diploid number is 46 because we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. That adds up to 46. So that is diploid when they're in pairs. There's also haploid. This is having only one member of each homologous pair of chromosomes, characteristic of gametes. So haploid, think half the number of diploid. We represent that with the letter N. The haploid number is found in gametes or our reproductive cells, and in humans that would be 23, and this is our egg and sperm. And the reason that reproductive cells are half is because when the egg and sperm come together, that makes diploid cells. If they were not half the number of chromosomes, then we would be getting double the number of chromosomes each time, and we'll find out later that having more than two chromosomes can be detrimental. So our objectives today were to define genetics, differentiate between a gene and a chromosome, describe the structure of a chromosome, and explain the difference between a haploid and a diploid chromosome number. So don't forget your 5 questions and remember to keep watching to answer the questions at the end.